Welcome back to Quick Canvas Tutorials. This is part 2 of the block-in episode where we talked about the use of primary lines to block in our subject onto the canvas. Today we're going to be talking about the use of secondary lines, which will allow us to start giving shape to our subjects or whatever it is that we're painting. We will also start by doing a quick recap of how to do those primary lines and how to use them. And at the end, I might give you an exercise to try to practice this in a different way. In previous episodes, I talked about the importance of planning your composition and more or less knowing where you're going to place your subjects onto the canvas and being able to visualize that in your head before you start doing anything. Once you're able to do that, you can start to simplify your subject onto shapes like a square or a circle or a triangle, or just use a combination of lines to try to find the limits of your subject so you can block it into the canvas. As you can see on the example, I started with the lower limit of my subject, then I went for the sides because I thought that somehow was important to me, even more than the top for some reason, but you can do it however you want. I went for the top side after that, and then I tried to find the midpoint of my subject. Now, this is everything I needed in my case to really lock in the subject onto the central composition that I had chosen before. But this is going to vary depending on what you're painting. So you're done with the primary lines and you're done with blocking in the main elements of your painting. You know where everything's going to go, and now you want to start giving shape to the actual subject. And this is exactly what the secondary lines are for. They allow you to start giving shape to the subject. And I am a big fan of continuing this idea of using simple lines just to keep dissecting those midpoints and those upper lower limits a bit more without having to add too much detail. But obviously you can start using curves. You can start to be a bit more flexible with the way that you start sketching the subject. In my case, I started subdividing the lower part of those primary lines with more lines to more or less find these oval shaped forms for the main body or the main part of the body. And I left the upper part for those lines that will more or less mark where the antennas are going to go. I wasn't that happy with the positioning or the placing of these antennas, but I think since those are such a simple element in this example, I didn't really care too much that they had to be super accurate. Now you can see that the outline of the subject is starting to appear on our canvas, and you're starting to recognize whatever it is that you're painting. You can continue this logic by trying to figure out the tertiary lines. And you can continue this even further, but at some point you're going to be able to just trace the outline of the figure or the subject and correct the details. But that's going to be made much easier if you have a structure like the one that I'm proposing. So I would still recommend that you try to find subjects that you find interesting and practice blocking them in with primary lines and giving them shape with the secondary lines. But if you want a different way to learn this, you can also look at art history. Try to use paintings and examples from art history that really captivate you, and try to imagine how you would block in those subjects onto those canvases and how you would use those secondary lines to give them shape. So to conclude, once you're done with the composition and you're done blocking in your subject onto the canvas, then you can start giving it shape by using those secondary lines. And you can continue doing this as much as you want until you refine that outline and you're happy with it. Don't complicate it, keep using simple lines, simple shapes, and you'll get there eventually. So thanks again for watching. I hope this was somewhat useful for you. If you like this content, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.